Hi there. If we haven't met before, my name is Harold Ager, and I'm the minister here at the Riverton Church of Christ in Riverton, Wyoming. If you caught my post yesterday, I'm talking about the story of Easter day by day as it unfolded for Jesus. And if you haven't seen that video, I invite you to scroll back in our page and find Thursday's video. But today, let's talk about Friday. In the story so far, we've been reading in the book of Luke, which is one of the four gospel accounts that tells the story of Jesus. And towards the end of the book of Luke, in chapter 22, we have seen Jesus sharing one last meal with his apostles, where he shares that his body will be broken and his blood will be spilled, and the bread and the wine should be done in remembrance of him. After they have that meal, they go to the garden where Jesus prays that if there's any other way, dear God, please do it some other way. He sweats blood, he is so anxious. But nevertheless, there is no other way. And when he returns to the apostles, in that moment is when Jesus is taken away. Judas comes in with all the guards and the elders and everyone, and they take him away. And he goes, and when he arrives to Pilate's, he's being held and beaten and mocked. We ended in Luke chapter 22 in verse 65 with the guards mocking him and beating him and blaspheming him. But that was yesterday. What happens today on Friday as we celebrate Easter on Sunday? Well, if you would, look with me in Luke chapter 22 at the very last few verses, verse 66, and we're going to read 23 as well today. But Luke 22:66, this is the ESV, the story of Jesus on Friday. So when day came, the assembly of the elders of the people gathered together, both the chief priests and the scribes, and they led him away to their council. And they said, "If you're the Christ, tell us." But he said to them, "If I tell you, you will not believe, and if I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man shall be seated at the right hand of the power of God." So they all said, "So you are the Son of God then?" And he said, "You say that I am." Then they said, "What further testimony do we need? We've heard it ourselves from his own lips." 23 verse 1. Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You've said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and to the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching all throughout Judea, from Galilee and even up to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he heard that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at the time. Verse 8, when Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and was hoping to see some miraculous sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod with his soldiers, treating him with contempt, they mocked him. Then arraying him in splendid clothing, they sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other on that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people. And he said to them, "You brought me this man as one who is misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of the charges you brought against him. And neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving of death has been done by this man. I will therefore punish and then release him." See, the story of Jesus is continuing in the morning of Friday. Jesus has been mocked and beaten all night, as far as we know. But when morning comes, the accusers take him before the courts. They take him before Pilate. And what's Pilate ask of Jesus? He says, "Are you really the king of the Jews?" And Jesus replies with, "You say that I am." Pilate has him before him and realizes that it's not in his jurisdiction. Really, this is Herod's jurisdiction. And conveniently, Herod's here today. So he puts him before Herod. And Herod's a fan. Herod wants to know more about this Jesus guy, see some miraculous sign done by him. And so he examines Jesus and finds no guilt in him. He gets sent back to Pilate. Pilate says the same thing. "You've brought me before as if he was a criminal, but yet I find nothing wrong with him." So what does Pilate say? He says, "This Jesus whom you've brought as a terrible man, I see nothing wrong, so here's what I'll do. I'm not going to kill him. I'll punish him and let him go. He's done nothing wrong." But the crowd's not going to have that. Pick up with me in Luke 23, verse 18. "But they all cried out together, 'Away with this man! Release to us Barabbas!'" Barabbas was a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus. But they kept on shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" And a third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving death. I'll just punish him and release him." But 23, but they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified. And their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided at their demand it should be granted. He released the man who'd been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, who they asked for, and he delivered Jesus over to their will. Verse 26, "As they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry behind Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of people and of women who were mourning and lamenting for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, 'Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren wombs that have never borne, the breasts that have never nursed. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and the hills, cover us. For if they do these things when wood is green, what will happen when it's dry?' 2 others who were criminals were led away to be put to death with Jesus. And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him. And the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then they cast lots to divide his garments. And they stood by watching, but the ruler scoffed at him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ of God, the chosen one. The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him sour wine and saying, If you're the king of the Jews, save yourself. There was also an inscription written above him, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who was hanged rallied at him, saying, Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. But the other rebuked him, saying, Don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed justify, for we are receiving due reward for our deeds. But this man, Jesus, he's done nothing wrong. And he said, Jesus, remember me when you get to your kingdom. And he said to him, Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. So Friday has come. Jesus has been put on trial. And trial did not go well. Despite Pilate's best efforts, he could not get Jesus released. The crowd was too riled up. They even said, "Give us a murderer in exchange. We'll let a murderer go free if you just kill Jesus." Pilate had nothing he could do. The crowds overpowered him, and he released Barabbas and gave them Jesus to be crucified. They are going up to the hill, the skull, if you will. Golgotha is another word we have for it, where Jesus was going to be crucified along with two robbers. Typically in tradition, the one that was to be crucified would have to carry his cross up the hill, part of his punishment. But they got another man named Simon of Cyrene to carry it. Why? Probably because Jesus had been beaten so much the night before he could barely walk, yet alone carry the cross that they were going to murder him on. But nonetheless, they get up the hill. Jesus is hung with the two murderers, one on his left, one on his right. Everyone is mocking him and casting lots over his clothes. No respect for him. He's the King of the Jews. But yet, on one side of him, he's got a robber who says, "Release us if you're really the King of the Jews." And then another who knows what he's about. He asks Jesus, "Will you take me with you?" And what's Jesus' response? Today I will see you in my kingdom." Jesus is hung on the cross to die. Verse 44. Friday is a tough day. It was now about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour, when the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus said, calling out in a loud voice, "Father, in your hands I commit my spirit." And having said this, he breathed his last breath. Now, when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God, saying, "Certainly this man was innocent." And all the crowds that had assembled for this spectacle, when they saw what had taken place, they returned home, beating their breasts. And all of his acquaintances and the women who had followed him up from Galilee stood at a distance, watching all of these things. Now, there was a man named Joseph from a Jewish town called Arimathea, and he was a member of the council and a good and righteous man, who had not consented to the decision and action, and he was looking for the kingdom of God. This man went up to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a tomb cut from stone, where no one had ever been laid. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and where his body was now laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. But on the Sabbath day, they rested according to the commandment. So Friday has concluded, and it's a tough day. Jesus is hung on the cross, and after speaking to the thief, he breathes his last breath. He has died on the cross. The will of God has now been executed. The ultimate sacrificial lamb has been slain. But the story doesn't end there. Not even today does it end there. See, after Jesus has passed, we have Joseph of Arimathea, who was a good and righteous man. He cared about Jesus. And so he takes the body down from the cross. He takes care of it. He wraps it in linens and puts it in a brand new tomb that he had that had never been used. So the ladies that were following him, they saw that he was taken care of and placed in a tomb. So they went away to prepare spices for him, to embalm him, if you will. But remember, it's Friday. In the Jewish tradition, they had the Sabbath on Saturday. So these women were not able to return until Sunday. Sabbath, Saturday, was a day where they were not to do any work. So they took the day off. And they will return on Sunday. And we'll return tomorrow, just for a brief moment, to talk about Saturday and then, of course, Sunday. Thank you for looking at the story of Easter with me. I'll see you tomorrow.